Our planet is in crisis. You know it, we know it. But honestly, where is our emergency plan?
It's not good enough.
We demand our government protects our future generations.
We demand they stop all destruction
of our forests, our oceans and our wildlife. No argument.
Oh, you want to know what XR demand? Here's what we demand.
We demand that we are involved in the decision making. It's our futures too.
We demand our governments reduce global carbon emissions to zero within 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
We demand they end any support for the fossil fuel economy and invest
in a green economy. We demand clean rivers,
fresh air, healthy soils.
We need to work with nature
to sort out all that damage.
We demand the will and action of our government.
We demand a fair and just plan that addresses global inequality, so that everyone, north and south, can adapt to the new world which we must live in.
We demand training for the young and retraining for the old to help us all make a new start.
We have a simple choice to make. Either our governments make hard decisions now, or we all face tragic consequences later.
Where is your plan?
Where is your plan?
Where's your plan?
Where's your plan?
Where is your plan? Where's your plan?
Where is your plan?
Where is your plan? We only have my lifetime left. Where is your plan?
Welcome to Mitcham Morden Climate Question Time. I am Natalie Shukla. One lady. So I am Natalie Shukla. I am a resident of Mitcham Morden. I have lived in this area for my whole entire life. I'm a voter just like you. I have also worked for the all-party parliamentary climate change group and most recently for the United Nations Association of the UK. So I will act today as your independent moderator. I'd like to start by saying thank you to Extinction Rebellion for organising this important event and giving us, the voters, an opportunity to have our questions answered about the environmental issues that we really care about and that will influence our vote on Thursday. Which I'll just take a moment to read to you. They are for our candidates and for the audience. So, all candidates initially will be asked to make an opening pitch lasting no longer than 2 minutes. It will be my job to interrupt anyone who runs over time. And in the interest of balance and fairness, answers to the questions should also take no more than 2 minutes. A reminder to our candidates, please do not speak until you are asked to do so by the moderator. I will be rotating the order that candidates answer the questions. We're delighted that we have every single candidate with us that's standing in the selections, which means that in order to get through all of our questions this evening, we won't have a chance to answer every single question. If there's something you particularly like to answer, please put up your hand and I'll try and come to you. Now, our audience rules for this evening. Please be respectful of all candidates and of other audience members' questions. This is a free and a fair election, and everyone deserves a chance to say their piece. Please do not attempt to disrupt the moderator or candidates, even in a supportive way. Under no circumstances will any commentary or question that is deemed prejudiced be permitted. We will have 8 questions that have been submitted by our audience, and they will be followed by questions from our audience directly at the end of the session. Questions may take no longer than 20 seconds, so please prepare, be quick and to the point, so we can get through as many of your questions as possible. This is a climate-focused hustings, so as such, keep your questions focused on the climate emergency, the ecological emergency and other environmental topics. Finally, this hustings relates to the general election and therefore national policies, so please respect that the specifics of Merton Council's initiatives on climate change are not part of today's discussion. I'm pleased to say that today's discussions will be being spread wider by Merton.TV and can be followed online using the hashtag Merton.TV GE2019. So finally I will introduce our candidates for this evening. We have representing the Christian People's Alliance, Des Coke, representing the Brexit Party, Jeremy Maddox, representing the Green Party, Pippa Maslin, representing the Labour Party, Siobhan McDonough, representing the Liberal Democrats, Luke Taylor, and representing the Conservative Party, Toby Williams. In the interest of fairness again, we'll ask them to make their 2-minute presentations to you in alphabetical order. So first, please talk Roy Dennis.
Thank you very much. So my name is Des Coke. Basically, as regards to climate change, I'm aware that there's a Climate Change Act which the government has agreed to, and the Climate Change Act, what it aims to do is to make the greenhouse gases by 80% lower by 2050. 2050 is a long time away from here, but that started. There's also a Paris Agreement, whereby the Paris Agreement aims to get different countries, UK has agreed to it, countries in Africa has agreed to it, and a range of other countries have agreed to the Paris Agreement, whereby what we aim to do is to lower the with the Paris Agreement, it aims to lower the emissions to 2 degrees, yeah? And there's a date put on that as well, which is 2030, if I'm right, without looking at it. But anyway, the point of the matter is, I'm aware that there is a climate emergency. I'm aware that this council, Merton Council, has agreed to it, to be part of that act. It has to, because basically, as I said before, the Climate Change Act is there first, and it's agreed to the Paris Agreement, and that's a few years away from now. I just wanted to say that even though it's a few years away from now, I'm aware that there's an emergency, and I'm aware that that people at the moment, Extinction Rebellion is on a hunger strike for this, and they want to see change, we want to see change. It is immediate, there has to be change. I'm aware that the Church of England has agreed to it, and what the Church of England wants to do as well is actually investing in companies, because it wants certain companies to get on board with the act, with the climate change. Thank you so much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeremy Mallett, and I'm representing the Brexit Party. I'd just like to tell you a little bit about myself and give you a personal perspective of what the environment and climate change means to me and what I have done in my own small way. The thing of great concern to me, and something which I am very passionate about, is saving the rhino in Africa. These beautiful creatures are going extinct. Every 8 hours, a rhino is shot by poachers and killed, and within a few years they will be extinct unless we do something about it. So I have been working together with a group of very dedicated people who have put money and resources, and what we try to do is we try to give equipment directly to the gamekeepers and the people there who are responsible for these reserves in order to preserve the rhino and to give them a future. And they need basic things like clothing, boots, and watches. So this is about me personally, and I also, of course, try to do everything I can because our environment really is so precious and so important to us. In terms of the Brexit Party and what our policies are, obviously we want to leave. We think that the Common Fisheries Policy has been devastating to our fishing stocks, and that if we get back control of that, we can do something to restore the fish stocks and make sure that we have proper environmental control by our elected politicians to control it. Same with the Common Agricultural Policy. This has been a mitigated disaster, I'm sure you would agree, in terms of looking after the agriculture in our environment. We can do an awful lot better if we take back control and bring this back under the control of elected politicians in our government. And finally, some of the 2 initiatives on a national scale that we would like to do, which is to plant millions more trees and also to remove, stop litter being sent out to other countries and deal with it ourselves so that we recycle and can take proper control of it. So those are some of our policies. Sorry, it's not much time. Thank you.
Last autumn, I read the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's special report, and I felt compelled to take action locally. I asked the Council at the February and April full Council meetings if they would declare a climate emergency and make Merton carbon neutral by 2030. I started a petition which, with the help of others, gathered over 2,200 signatures. And I met with the Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, Health and the Environment to discuss what a carbon neutral borough might look like. In July of this year, the Council responded with a unanimous passing of a cross-party motion to declare a climate emergency. And they set two targets. One, a 2030 target for the Council and its estates. Two, a 2050 target for the borough. Now, I and 12 other residents sit on a climate emergency working group, and our function is to try to help to shape the climate action plan that will go to the Cabinet next year. The group has many, many ideas, but we are really having to push some people in the Council to engage with us properly. My party is listening to the scientists, and we think that 2050 is 20 years too late. Climate breakdown and the biodiversity crisis are nothing less than an ecological disaster that must inform our approach to all areas of life, from what we eat, to what we wear, from what we live in, to the way we get about, to where we work, to the work we do. So tonight, I hope that you will see that our ideas are bold and practical and robust and kind. Greenpeace has just ranked the party's policies and we come out on top with 38 out of 40 points. Likewise, I saw today that the Faculty for Public Health and the Grantham Institute have scored us 5 out of 5, again, the top. So the Greens are really pleased to be judged so favourably by the experts. I hope you will judge us favourably tonight.
Good evening, everybody. My name is McDonough, and I am the Labour candidate in the general election for Mitcham and Morden. Climate change is one of the defining issues, if not the defining issues of our time, and I feel incredibly strongly about the need for immediate, concerted and decisive action in this area. The UK has a duty to play a leading role in the fight to reduce carbon emissions and combat climate change globally. Since Parliament declared a climate emergency and adopted the 2050 net zero target, the government has not introduced a single practical measure that will help the UK to lower its emissions. I, along with my Labour colleagues, are continuing to challenge the government to put their warm words into action, because this issue is of such paramount importance that there is simply not the time for warm words alone. I am incredibly proud of the work that the last Labour government did to push this issue further up the political agenda, introducing the climate change levy and a range of measures to improve energy efficiency measures. Indeed, I was the government whip, and I wasn't the government whip for long, that ensured the Climate Change Act became law. And I am very proud of that legislation, the first of its kind in the world. Which it included a move towards the greater reporting of climate emissions. Nevertheless, I appreciate there is so much more to be done, as I know is the case for many in our community. The UN's recent climate change report, which stressed that we have only 12 years to make the actions necessary to limit global warming to a maximum of 1.5 degrees Celsius, served as an incredibly poignant reminder of the urgency with which the issue must be tackled. In recent weeks, I signed the early day motion in Parliament calling for a climate change emergency to be declared, wrote to the Prime Minister calling for an urgent debate in government time to be held on this issue, and signed a letter requesting that the UN Climate Change Conference be held in the UK, amongst other things.
I think unanimously everybody stood here in front of you will agree that tackling climate change, climate emergency is absolutely number one priority for us as a society and as a planet. We have a moral duty to act because we know that there is a problem and we know what we need to do about it. Additionally, we have the tools and the resources to actually implement those changes. So it would be a moral failing if we do not do that. The only way we're able to achieve the massive changes to our economy, our lifestyle and our society is to have a credible plan that people can buy into and not leave parts of our society behind, and also not allow a wealthy few to pay their way out of action. Most critically, we must have a credible plan for the economy so that we can afford the aspirations that we all have to combat the climate emergency. The IFS has said that only Liberal Democrats have a manifesto that's credible and radical approach to taxation, borrowing and spending. The IFS is very clear that Labour will be unable to deliver its spending commitments, and the Tory manifesto pledge not to raise taxes over the next 5 years is not being honest with voters. Labour has also removed the commitment to be carbon neutral by 2030 from its manifesto under the pressure from the unions, so really they can't be trusted to act in all our best interests. Decarbonising energy, using zero carbon modes of ground transportation, insulating our homes, moving to a more plant-based diet, are things we can do today to reduce our impact on the planet. These should be our easy wins that society can be encouraged to do through taxation nudges and also societal pressure and better education in schools and things like that. But we've got to also improve the planet around us. Liberal Democrats will plant 60 million trees a year over the course of the next Parliament to improve our natural environment. Also encourage things like the rewilding work that the Wimbledon Trust have done on the in Merton, close by us. Only the Lib Dems have a record of delivering dramatic change whilst in government, delivering a massive increase in onshore-offshore wind and leading for us to be close to being able to turn off our coal power stations. And a credible, fully costed plan to deliver more improvements in the future.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Well, as you may have guessed, I am a Conservative, and I am also a keen environmentalist. And those two things are not contradictory, they are not mutually exclusive. Indeed, they go hand in hand, because at the core of what it means to be a Conservative is, you guessed it, to conserve, to keep the great things about our country, our society and our planet. And that means that we have to be completely committed to looking after our fantastic environment and, yes, tackling climate change as well. Because let me be clear, I completely believe that climate change is the biggest challenge that we face, and that we need to take robust action to tackle what is an existential threat. And I am so proud to be standing for a party which in government has cut emissions by 25% since 2010. I am so proud to be standing for a party which has helped this country to switch on to renewable energy. In 2010, 6.9% of our electricity came from renewable energy. It is now 33%. That is extraordinary progress, but there's further to go. And I'm so proud to stand for a party that has created 400,000 green jobs in the last 9 years. There's a lot to do, and there's a lot further to go, but I'm proud of my party's record, and I'm really looking forward to discussing your ideas and my ideas going forward. Thank you.
Now let's launch into the questions for this evening. So as I mentioned, these questions have been pre-submitted by our audience. The first question is, will each candidate explain, if elected, how they would work to address the climate crisis with the urgency it deserves? I'd like to start with the Brexit Party.
Well, we were the first people to introduce a policy to start planting a lot of trees. And this was taken up by the Labour Party, and they then used the example of Ethiopia, where they planted millions of trees, and they came up with the idea that they could plant 2,000 trees every minute in this country. Well, it just so happens that Ethiopia is about 5 times the size of the United Kingdom, and it also has 1.1 million people. 1.1 billion people. No, that's not right. No, 111 million people. And so it's considerably more people and more space and has the resources and ability to perform this task, and it took over £1 billion in resources to do it. We've come up with the policy of planting more trees, doing it in a sustainable way, in a managed way, to ensure that our environment can be safe for the future and that we're not going to destroy all the resources that this country has got. And unfortunately, the other parties, when they've taken on this policy, have rather wrecked it in terms of overusing the resources. In addition to that, we also have the policy which is to clean up the seas by making sure that none of the plastics and all the recyclable materials from this country get exported over to other countries, and we look after them and deal with them on our own. In addition, getting out of the European Union, as I said before, is fundamental to us taking back control of what we do in society and having accountable members of parliament so that we can direct them and we can actually make sure that our members of parliament protect our environment. Yes, admittedly, we're only responsible in this country for 1.2% of the global CO2 production going forward, but that is still significant in the 26 gigatons of CO2 that's produced every year into the environment. So we need to take back control and make sure that we can do something to address this issue ourselves. And at the moment we can't, because it's outside of our control with the European Union politicians, and we can't do anything about it. Thank you.
And over to Pippa, please.
Okay, I think it's a very wide-ranging question that I could answer by handing you the manifesto in a way. But I suppose the first pin, if we're going to pin the tail on this, is our Green New Deal, which is a 10-year radical strategy to decarbonise our economy. We believe that 2030 is the right target, as I indicated in my introduction. We want it to be a just transition, and hopefully later I'll get to explain how it's going to be just. But with the Green New Deal, we actually would like some reorganisation in government. Instead of having the Treasury, we would like to have two departments, the Department of Economic Transformation and the Department for the Green New Deal. There would be a carbon chancellor installed at number 11, whose task would be to allocate 100 billion a year of the Green New Deal fund and issue an annual carbon budget to direct the decarbonisation of the economy. I'll give you a flavour of other things that we would do to tackle the urgency, but again, I hope to elaborate on these later. With housing, for example, we would like to, we understand that homes account for about 15% of greenhouse gases emitted. We feel that the government is taking us in the wrong direction. We would like to deep retrofit all homes. There are 29 million in the UK. We would like to deep retrofit 1 million a year, which will involve insulation, it will involve the replacement of gas boilers with heat pumps or solar thermal, geothermal, biomass stored heat technologies, solar panels, other forms of domestic energy regeneration. We want to make sure that all of the 8 million rented homes out there are A-rated for energy efficiency. I've got so much more to say, but there you go. Green New Deal and housing for now.
That's the priority. So much of the answer to this question is predicated on who wins the general election and whether or not we leave the EU. Because, as we know, something like 61% of CO2 emissions in the world are created by 5 nations. So we can be as good and efficient as we like, but our responsibility is to engage with those 5 nations of China, America, India, no, not Brazil, and 2 more, I'm thinking about them, to try and work together. And that's why, one of the reasons why I oppose us leaving the EU, because the EU has one of the greatest standards on emission, standards on animal husbandry and welfare, And the fact is that we can't go alone, that we are part of a large number of nations trying to get improvements. Nationally, we will create 1 million jobs in the UK to do with the green industrial revolution. We will invest a national transformation fund of £400 billion, with many of the things that the Green Party is suggesting about improving the insulation to our 27 million new homes. But locally, our own behaviour individually it affects this effort. And one of the things that I found as the local MP going to primary schools is just how important those children are taking on these issues. Recently, I was delighted to be able to take Singlegate Primary School Year 5 to bring their petition to do with deforestation to Parliament. Only this morning, I was in Beechholm Primary School listening to speeches quite about this. The pest of power of children is enormous, so the actions have to be local, national and international.
I believe those last two countries might have been Russia and Japan.
Yes, it.
Okay, the next question. Question 2. What are the decarbonisation deadlines put forward by your party, and how do they reflect the scale and urgency of the crisis? I'll come first to the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you very much.
So I think the question of targets is absolutely vital. And I think the reality of the situation is that we know we need to act, and more important than making unachievable targets that unfortunately we may not achieve is to have realistic targets that we can bring people along and we can achieve and retain confidence that we're working towards a positive target. Now, one of the 3 demands, which I imagine we'll come on to later, is that we achieve net zero by, I think it's 2025. Now, we all agree that we need to be reducing our emissions and we need to achieve net zero. But I personally, I think the Liberal Democrats have made the right decision in making an achievable target rather than an aspirational target that will not be achieved. We do need to make dramatic changes. We do need to change our behaviour, and we need to change the way we generate energy, how we treat our waste, how we travel, how we live, how we eat, how we transport goods. But in my mind, the most important thing is to make those targets both achievable and allow people to come along and see the changes they're making in their own lives, in their lifestyle, in the choices of goods they buy, actually contributing towards things that we can achieve. Now, none of us are going to disagree that this is an issue, that we need to set targets that we need to achieve net zero point, but the Liberal Democrat targets of 80% of energy by 2030 and net zero by 2045 are achievable, and more importantly, they will allow people to be brought along and to buy into those goals and not be forced and not lose confidence and faith in targets that are never met.
Yeah, so the questions of targets it's a very, very important question, and I agree that they have to be completely realistic targets. This Conservative government has legislated for this country to end all of its contribution to global warming by 2050. Now, I know that that is not as soon as many people in this room would like. Frankly, I would love it to be sooner as well. But I think I need to personally listen to the experts on this one. And the Committee for Climate Change has said that 2050 is achievable and it's realistic and it's doable. I've got a quote here from the IFS who said about the 2030 target, which is Labour's target. They said we need zero emissions. Getting there by 2050 is tough and expensive, but feasible and consistent with avoiding most damaging climate change. Aiming for zero emissions by 2030 is almost certainly impossible, hugely disruptive, and risks undermining consensus. I need to take my lead from the experts on this one. That sounds to me to be achievable and realistic, which I think is positive. And what I would say as well is I think when we talk about the climate emergency, and when we talk about climate change, yes, of course, it is so important that we are robust and we get to grips with this problem, but we need to win hearts and minds. And I think if we go for an unrealistic target and start hammering people and telling them what to do and what they can and can't do in terms of sort of flights and things like that, or we're hitting them through bills, I don't think we're going to win hearts and minds. We need to take the entire country with us. We need to unify the country. And I think this target of 2050 is reasonable and it's achievable. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so basically, there are 40,000 deaths a year due to the climate emergency, which is basically due to nitrogen dioxide and diesel fuels. The first thing we want to do is to support the Cricket Green Charter, because that's important. Because with Cricket Green Charter, what we aim to do is build quality homes, maintain green spaces and so forth. So for us, that's important. Well, for me, it's definitely important. The next thing we'd like to do is basically the Paris Agreement, because it was 2015 that it came up. Basically, we want to do a review before the end of 2020 on the Paris Agreement, because that would be quite useful as well, because even though 92 countries support it, it's important that we do a review because it's 5 years old. The other thing we want to do is we look at ways, because as I mentioned earlier on that the hottest day since 1910 was the heat wave of June 2019. And what we want to do, obviously, we'd like to introduce a scrappage scheme, a scrappage vehicle. So therefore all diesel cars will be scrapped, and we will introduce a way in which people will get funds to deal with electric cars and electric buses, as we want to focus on. We want to encourage regional and local authorities to move towards 100% electric taxis and cars by 2022. Thank you.
On to our third question. What will your party do to avoid the terrible floods that have devastated parts of the country over the past 10 years? We've all seen the wonder getting deeper and deeper as it rains, so I'm sure it's something quite relevant to all of us locally as well. May I ask the Green Party to...
Okay, so that's actually a quite short answer for this one. We would like to prevent building on floodplains for a start, but we would also would like to plant more trees and to restore the soil in areas that are at risk of flooding. There's a practice of concreting riverbanks, which is very effective. The natural solutions are there. So I'm trying to look at the question, see if there's anything.
That's fantastic.
I think that's it, basically.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, obviously, the floods that we've seen in north of England over the last couple of weeks has been incredibly tragic, particularly running up to Christmas. It's very sad to see, and hopefully the support is there for the residents who are affected. But particularly the B word comes into this because as we're members of the EU, we have access to the EU's flood defence scheme and funding for projects both to reduce flooding and also to clear up and to provide compensation and action following floods. So our ability to have access to those schemes will be reduced if we do proceed to Brexit under Conservative and the Brexit Party scheme. So if that is a single clear action will be, or a scheme that is affected by Brexit. In terms of Pippa's points about reducing building on floodplains, absolutely. These should be clearly built into local plans and required by local councils to observe and to reduce the obvious things that we can do. And similarly, flooding has affected us here in Mitcham Morden. Bishopsford Bridge that was collapsed over the summer during the flooding. One might be uncharitable and say that it was poor oversight and management from the council that meant that the works weren't properly supervised, and after the flooding, when the props had been taken down, they weren't put back up again in time and allowed the bridge to collapse.
I think that the single party state that we live in Mitcham Morden could do with a little bit of oversight from its MP, and somebody who isn't Labour might do a little bit better of a job than that, than the current incumbent. Thank you.
Hi. Yes, so the B word came up there, and I'd just like to say that the Brexit Party, it is our policy that the money which we currently give to the European Union, 13 billion every year, we would take some of that back and put it back into essential services and infrastructure, and part of that, of course, would be to mitigate flooding. We wouldn't need to use all of it, because at the moment we don't get all of the money that we give to the European Union back, but we would put some of it into mitigating flooding. And I would agree with many of the ideas of planting trees, not building on floodplains, and being careful, but there is also one other issue. And if you talk to a lot of rural communities, they have a big concern with the lack of dredging that's been taking place. But dredging is not always the answer, but in many cases it is the answer, and where it is shown to be effective, it should be reintroduced. And I think this is about local knowledge and local communities. They know where it works and they know where it doesn't work, and unfortunately, due to government cuts and lack of funding, some of this has been taken away, which many local people in those communities do feel that has been the cause of part of the problems.
Moving on to question number 4. Would your party introduce a carbon tax frequent flyers, or give tax breaks on cleaner technologies? Can I come first to Labour?
I think it's our plan to give tax breaks on cleaner technologies, to put investment into actually the research and development of these, and to ensure that there is a development in that area. My problem with stopping people flying is the people you stop first are the poorest. It's only rich people who can afford increased airfares that shouldn't be allowed to travel or to go on holiday. I think with all environmental issues we have to consider, are we just splitting society to prevent those for whom money is tight from doing what we allow those who have a great deal of money, and that is an enormous challenge.
Yes, I am very supportive of tax breaks for clean energy companies, absolutely, entirely. I think that we've seen a lot of the clean energy industry being subsidised over the last 10 years. That has worked so well that some of those subsidies actually have now been withdrawn because those companies are able to stand on their own two feet and actually provide this brilliant new renewable energy for themselves. So yes, I am completely on the side of that. In terms of a flyers tax, to be honest with you, that is something I would want to avoid, because what I said earlier is I think if we are serious about getting everybody on board, we need to tackle climate change in the least punitive way possible. And Siobhan's completely right. If we did impose a flying tax, it would be the very poorest who are saving up for months, for weeks, for their summer holiday, and wouldn't be able to afford to do that.
It's about the frequent flyer. It's not about frequent flyers.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. In terms of one tax, I think that we certainly could impose. I think we could impose a tax on business for their plastic packaging. Frankly, I think there needs to be a lot more corporate responsibility in this country. Businesses need to be encouraged robustly to take a lead on this, and I think imposing a tax and making them pay for their rubbish would be a very, very good start. So yes, there are some taxes that I would support because I think they'd be useful, they'd be constructive. There are others which I think would be punitive and undermine the cause that we all care about.
There's a lot of interest from our panel in answering this question, so if you'll indulge me, we'll let all of them
Okay, so as a carbon tax, what I've already said, that we would have a carbon tax on fossil fuels. It would be progressively raised. It's a 10-year plan to decarbonise, to get away from fossil fuel use altogether. In terms of frequent flyer levies, the Green Party are probably seen as the most extreme with this. We think that more than one flight is going to count as frequent flying, and yes, we would put a levy on that. There's a well-known, to us it's well-known anyway, statistic that 15% of the people who take international flights, sorry, 15% of people take 75% of international flights. And so we feel it's only right that we disincentivise that form of travel through taxing them. In terms of cleaner technologies, we have tons of ideas for industry as to, and it range from investing in research to build the cleaner technologies that we need in the first place, to giving grants to companies to do whatever they need to do to decarbonise, whether it's in farming, for example, moving from high carbon machinery to low carbon machinery, whether it be enabling them to have 100% recycling schemes. I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
I just briefly like to answer this question. I work in the technology industry, and I think in this country we do have some amazing and fantastic businesses that after we leave the European Union, we would actually be able to make sure that we can assist and help those businesses to prosper and survive, particularly in the environmental areas and in producing solar panels, wind turbines, but also new technologies, new battery technologies, where we do actually have some small nascent companies which are world-leading and world-beating in this type of technology. And fundamentally, this sort of technology can actually fundamentally change our lives. The idea that we can have small batteries which are environmentally friendly to produce, and at the same time store energy and then put it back onto the grid and onto the network at times when it's not needed locally. And this is a fantastic way to reduce the number of power stations. We do, of course, have to be very cognizant and aware that a lot of the materials that go into these batteries today come from places like the Congo, and they're not mined in a very environmental fashion at all. And in fact, it's said that up to 60 people a year die in those particular mines. So we have to be careful. There's an upside and a downside with these new technologies, but we do have some fantastic initiatives in this country.
So a couple of quick specific examples. So we would implement 5% VAT, so reduce VAT to 5% on electric vehicles to try and increase their uptake. That's something we can do today. You can take petrol and diesel vehicles off the road and you can replace them with zero emissions vehicles if they're fueled by renewable power. And then on the specific issue of the frequent flyer levy, I think that the Liberal Democrat policy is that we would replace the passenger duty with a frequent flyer tax. That would allow your second or third, I think it is, it might be your third and fourth, beyond flights to be taxed at a high rate, whereas you wouldn't be taxed the first couple. So the families that Siobhan is so rightly concerned about not being able to fly and being taxed out of the air would be exempt. So they would not be paying that tax, and a certain amount of flying would be available because this is the thing that allows people to communicate with other people around the world. It broadens the mind and it is good whilst we can do it. And it is a natural human urge and aspiration to travel and to explore. I don't think we should be discouraging them. However, I work in the aviation industry and I do a lot of travelling, and I know that a lot of my travel could be replaced with video conferencing, teleconferencing, that sort of stuff. But at the moment, a lot of clients demand that you're there and in person. I think that's common across a lot of industries, and a lot of those guys do represent this 70% of emissions produced by 15% of travellers. As part of the EU, we can set rules across a trading bloc that means that we would not be disadvantaged if we suddenly slap on a big tax on frequent flyers. That would allow us to work together with our partners to ensure that as a bloc we are presenting solutions to issues that we are presented as a species, as people.
The other thing I'd like to actually explore, and it's not in the Midday Manifesto, but it's maybe something that Extinction Rebellion looked at, is personal carbon budgets. So that it's not only your frequent flying or your driving or your individual activities, but your whole contribution to the environment that's actually considered similar to a kind of tax return type of basis, which maybe we can explore further at some point.
First thing we would want to do is basically we want to look at the multinational companies like Google, Facebook and Amazon, who basically, it doesn't bring anything into the budget. What they do, they transfer their money offshore. So whether or not, if we look at those companies, we could bring in £12 billion, which will help marriage and families, because the breakups of families is costing $50 billion per annum. We'd also like to, with that money that we bring in from Google and Facebook, we'll also be able to help other companies like even prisoners, to give $2 billion towards prisoners. Because basically, as you know, there's a recent terrorist who was released the other day. But what we want to do, we want to be in a position whereby people who go to prison, they get, because it's costing us £30,000 per annum for each prisoner. So what we wanted to be able to do, we want to be able to look at ways in which we could support the prisoner when they come out with houses, and also the homeless. We're looking at the homeless, in which way homeless people can actually get shelter. And with that money, we'd be looking at the NHS to look at ways in which the NHS can actually bring in and get more funding. We look at companies like GlaxoSmithKline, who are doing drug tests of $4 billion per annum, and they're doing research and development on new drugs. But because we're Christian People Alliance, we believe that all people should be good custodians of this planet, and they need to respect God's creation. What we're looking at, we're also looking at being in a position where the finance that comes in, it can help people. It'll help people like nurses and doctors move forward. Thank you.
Fifth question of the evening. Will you set up a National Citizens Assembly? I'm going to call on one of the members of Extinction Rebellion just to summarise for our audience what the National Citizens Assembly is being called for.
So I don't know if people are aware of what a Citizens Assembly is, but it's basically people from all walks of life who are randomly selected in the same way that a jury is selected, and it would be run by an independent organisation, free from interference by government, corporations or anyone else, including Extinction Rebellion. It would investigate issues in depth, consider evidence and views from all sides, and questions and discuss in small groups and make decisions together about how we move forward. Because I think what they found is that small groups make better decisions than really large groups. So, yeah.
Thank you. So, who should we come to first on this question?
I've got no problem with a citizens' jury, but I do think we need to think about how much power and control do we give a citizens' jury? Who elects the members? Who gets a say? What accountability is there? If somebody stands for election, they're voted and they're voted out, presumably, in the event that they don't behave in a way that the constituents regard as acceptable. So I have got no problem with a citizens' jury. I would just say we have to be quite clear about how much power we give them and who chooses them. And often people indicate in countries with smaller populations that they can be affected, or cities or towns, and I am sure that is the case. But we are currently in a country of 60 million people, none of whom should be ignored. So while I'm sure citizens' juries have their place, I would be very careful about regarding them as the answer to all ills.
Thank you. It seems Siobhan's not really read the briefing memo on this one. So obviously, in the Liberal Democrat Manifesto, we absolutely support citizens' assemblies, both national and local, as the board that PIPA sits on with the local council to come up with local solutions to problems. And again, surprised the Labour Party doesn't like decisions being taken out to the central Politburo and given to the people. I wanted to be able to choose and select who gets to make decisions. Obviously, being chosen like a jury, randomly selected members of the public maybe make better decisions than politicians, and I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. Well, I think that your opinions seem to be quite clear on that. So, absolutely we do support it. Absolutely we see that the solutions that came up within Ireland on some very controversial issues such as access to abortion, I think, and also gay marriage were chosen by, or were decided by citizens' assemblies over there. Absolutely support it, and it's kind of a very Liberal Democrat approach to community politics, to coming up with solutions as close to the areas that people are affected by as possible.
Could I just remind members of the panel not to use comments like Politburo viewer? I think that was a little bit close to the vote. I think everybody wants to come back on this one, so I'm going to let everyone have their comments from this side down all the way down.
Thank you. Citizens' assembly is a good thing. It's democracy, and I like democracy. Also, I wanted to say that but the biggest problem, as Siobhan did point out, is watch this one. If you don't Brexit, how much power would the citizen assembly really have? It's a point, yeah? So in Christian People's Alliance, we believe that as soon as possible, we need to leave and honour the democracy of the country. 17 million people voted to leave. We have to honour the democracy. If we don't, we're going to set up something else, like a citizen assembly, where people are not going to honour the democracy. Why? Because there's a protocol set. That's what I say.
Well, I'm very sympathetic to your question, of course, because we in the Brexit Party think that politics today is broken. We need to do something about it, and it's no surprise that people are coming up with alternatives to try and fix the democratic system that we seem not to have at the moment. 3.5 years we've been waiting for the referendum result to be implemented, and the members of Parliament who are meant to be there representing our views have done their damnedest to fight against it. It's absolutely astonishing and unbelievable. So yes, we do agree with more democracy, a lot more democracy. We want to completely reform the House of Lords, which is an unelected chamber stuffed with people who are not representative. Absolutely. And we also would like to have referenda if enough people, 5 million people, actually raise a petition, then we're able to have other referenda. We think that's been a great thing. And on the climate issue, this is the way that we actually get back control, and we can change our environment, and we can cut down emissions, and we can do the things that we want to do outside of the control of the big corporations who are dominating and running the European Union today. We, the people, can get back control, and we can take back charge of our own country. That's what it's all about, and that's what Brexit's about. Thank you.
Okay, I haven't actually used the microphone up till now, so let's give it a go. Okay, so citizens' assemblies, I don't see that there's anything to be threatened by with the citizens' assembly. It's not about replacing representative democracy. And Luke kindly referenced the fact that I'm on this climate emergency working group with the council. Actually, I can't speak for everybody in the group, but I would say that more than me think that there is also room for a citizens' assembly within Merton to address how we reach carbon neutrality. I am acutely aware that I and the others who applied were already converted to the cause, as it were, and that a citizens' assembly would mean that there were a range of people from a range of backgrounds. That's a deliberate part of the makeup, and therefore you get a very healthy debate. So you will end up...
Like the electorate?
Yes, but that's not mutual...
A range of people.
Yes, that's an election is a particular form of gaining opinion, and a citizens' assembly is also another form, and they're not mutually exclusive, I wouldn't say. So I think that as long as you give people the time and space to thrash out the issues, and it's all conducted in as civil a manner as possible, I say bring it on. I would love to see one in Merton, and yeah, let's hope that we could get one actually to tackle the climate emergency alongside the climate emergency working group.
So I am no fan of unelected, unaccountable groups, which is why I'm so looking forward to us leaving the European Union on the 31st of January. No, I'm afraid I'm not supportive of the Citizens' Assembly because I think this is simply butt-passing. We have 650 MPs who are paid very nicely, thank you very much, to make tough decisions. And the buck should stop with them. They shouldn't have to go to other people to get advice on what to do. That is their job and they should be doing it. My other concern with this particular idea is that it is completely unaccountable. Who are these people and who voted for them? I have absolutely no idea. So I'm afraid I'm not supportive of this particular idea.
So Pippi, you're working on the Merton Council Climate Working Group. I'd just be interested in your thoughts on how that would compare to a Citizen Assembly and what the advantages of one or the other were, because I think we've got one at the moment, and I don't know whether you feel that being already switched on and informed is a better solution compared to a Citizen Assembly as an informed person, because I'm genuinely interested in the question.
I kind of feel like I did try to answer that already, which is that because we on the group are already convinced of the need to act with urgency.
Do you come up with better solutions as being informed rather than...
Well,
more workable
potentially, it's difficult. It depends how the discussion goes. I suppose it would be it would make me feel more confident that there were greater consensus, because the climate emergency working group is so small. As I said, there's only 13 of us. There were 14 originally. Sadly, someone had to drop out. We are all supposed to act as conduits between the council and the wider community. So linking up with residents, associations, friends of groups, that kind of thing. But with that, I kind of sense that we are all connected with people who, again, are already converted to the cause. And people have already talked today a lot about behaviour change. Oh, I'm supposed to stop. Sorry.
That was my fault.
Sorry.
Right, let's bring it back to the room now. I think we've got some pressing questions that people would like to ask themselves from the room. So we're going to skip right to that part of the evening. Can I have a show of hands? Does anybody have a burning question for our panel? If you have particular panellists that you'd like to address it, do let us know at the beginning of your question. If not, panellists, if you can indicate by a show of hands if you'd like to take a particular question. I'll come to you first there.
Thank you. This is a question for the four panellists from HIPAA through to the Conservative gentleman. I'm a teacher at Merton College. Trade union members in my college group took action 10 days ago in support of student climate strikes. We have to speak up outside classrooms because huge exam pressure massively curtails time in lessons for environmental and climate learning. What will you do in government to carry out the 2015 Paris Agreement's call to enhance climate change education?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. It's something that I can relate to on a personal level because I was a teacher for 13 years in secondary schools, and I also was a visiting tutor at university when I was doing my doctorate afterwards. So I have been watching these school strikes with great interest. Unfortunately, I work in a job where I don't feel I can go and support them on a Friday. I work for a local deaf and disabled people's charity, And if I'm not there for the service users, that doesn't feel fair overall. But I can relate particularly, I wanted to say, to this obsession with quantitative data, the obsession with testing, with our educational institutions becoming exam factories, and that before we even think about how we might raise awareness of climate change and equip our students to deal with it in the future, there are many subjects that have been squeezed out, the arts in the main. The Green Party has two main ideas. One is the English Climate Emergency Education Act, which would teach young people about the severity of the crisis and give them a voice in tackling it. Maybe that would mean that they didn't feel that they had to skip Fridays, because actually the educational system that they are in dealing with it. And we'd also like to introduce a nature GCSE. We have some quite specific ideas about that, and I'm being red carded.
My experience is that the thirst for discussion and debate and education on climate change is already there amongst pupils and students. It's the issue that's raised with me when I go into school assemblies. It's the letters I get from school students about issues of deforestation, maintaining and clearing the common, or this morning about other environmental issues. So I think that kind of world understanding and understanding of your society is a really important part of the curriculum, and that the environment is a part of that, which I think many children and students are thirsting for right now, and I see evidence of schools actually becoming involved in that.
Not on the curriculum, right? Can we do on the curriculum? Can we let all the panellists get down
So, just a couple of specific points. So, not enough time to teach about this sort of stuff. So, Liberal Democrats, we're going to scrap mandatory SATs, so there's more time to teach a broader, much more rounded education for children. We're going to implement a curriculum for life in all state-funded schools, so it includes PSE, RE, health education, financial literacy, and environmental awareness. That's one specific thing that will be on that. I imagine it's similar to kind of the old general studies style, kind of more rounded citizen sort of thing. I'll extend that to talking about civic duty and awareness of electoral participation and that sort of stuff. And I think kind of slight tangent to replacing Ofsted with a HM inspector of schools. So it should be every 3 years rather than randomly tested, and just change the way that the Ofsted interferes with and affects the way that schools are able to teach their students.
I think we've actually come on leaps and bounds with this, actually, because when I was at school, it's a good question, and I know where you're coming from, but I do think we have come on leaps and bounds, because when I was at school, which wasn't that long ago, I can't really remember being taught much about climate change. I can't really remember many of my friends talking about climate change, and that has changed a huge amount over the last 10 years. And it is really encouraging to see kids so involved and interested and passionate about climate change. I think that is a really good thing. One thing I would say is that I think it is possible to combine rigorous academic standards with good testing, whether that be at SATs, whether it be at GCSE or A-level, with raising awareness of climate change and the environment. What I would say, I don't know if it is already, if I'm being honest with you, but I think bringing in questions about climate change to PSHE, so personal education essentially, so it becomes part of your lifestyle and part of your awareness and emotional well-being, I think would be a really, really good step forward in schools. And I think it needs to be taught in a very holistic way throughout pretty much any subject it could be, to be honest with you, whether that be maths, English, science, geography, because I think our kids need to learn about it in that way. And I'm being red-carded, so I better stop, but I do have more to say on this, because I think it's a good question.
Very much. Any more questions from our audience, please? Who has their hands up? Yes. Actually, this gentleman.
Yes, to all the candidates, because Indonesia, Sumatra, and Malaysia and Brazil, they're deforesting and burning the trees, in which we need to absorb the carbon dioxide. Would you advocate banning of palm oil being imported in this country? And all around the world, anybody else that imports it, put pressure on them to ban it as well.
I think there's no question that the huge deforestation due to palm oil is unacceptable. And of course we would want to ban that kind of palm oil. But I think it's important to acknowledge that there is also sustainable palm oil. It's a more nuanced part of the debate. There are farmers with small farms who are relying on this. And I'm not saying that because I'm saying that jobs are more important than the environment, but I think that the nuance is important.
We have to stop eating crap food full of palm oil for the palm oil to stop being grown.
Right, I don't really know where to start, but there's so many questions I want to ask. None of you have talked about the environmental agency being reduced funding, so they have reduced officers to deal with rivers in all parts of the country. I don't know why you can't ban plastic completely from all the outlets in this Merton borough. I'm not the takeaway is a lot of plastic, but my main question is, no one's talked about airport expansion at Heathrow. So what do you plan to do about that?
Heathrow is a big one, we'll come to that. Can I just get two more questions from the audience? I'll get one over here and one at the back.
Hi, I'm John Mansfield, Mitcham Society, and we check the air pollution from the Cricket Green down to the town centre, and all the monitors are twice the level of what they should be. And they're building houses right to the close to the roads, all the way down the main road. And everyone says, you know, you should build 50 yards from a major road, or not near a major road.
Just comes one more at the back here. And Danica running.
Hi, thanks. I have a question for Siobhan. Siobhan, the Labour Party manifesto calls for the gas distribution industry to be nationalised. This is going to be incredibly expensive, and I think the Labour Party said that this will be funded through the profits that will accrue to the country from owning that asset. How is that compatible with decarbonising our energy system? How are you going to square that circle if you're looking to reduce carbon fossil fuel use? How's the thank you.
How's that going to work? Indeed, I'm coming back to the panellists now. So we've got questions on Heathrow, on air pollution, and that final one there. Right, we'll start.
Right, Heathrow, good question. I am completely against the expansion of Heathrow. I think it is a terrible, terrible idea. It is obviously terrible for our carbon emissions, and it is awful in terms of our quality of life in South London and South West London. I think it could have a devastating impact on residents in terms of air pollution and noise pollution. Obviously, unfortunately, it has passed through Parliament and is now going through a load of legal stuff. But if I'm elected as your MP and it comes back to Parliament, I'll vote against that. On air quality, it's a very good question, and you're completely right. Our air quality in this constituency simply is not good enough, like whole swathes of London. I think the key, or one of the keys to tackling air quality in this city is to clean up our bus fleet, because the amount of emissions that those buses pump out all day, every day is really bad. And I would love to see our bus fleet cleaned up with electric buses, hydrogen buses, and actually there's the expansion of the ULEZ coming forward. I think that money would actually be better spent, the money that would have to be spent on enforcing that and on designing it and rolling it out and all the rest of it, the money that would be spent on that, which is over 700 million quid, that should be used instead to clean up our bus fleet and use those buses and target those buses in areas like Mitcham and other parts of the constituency, Colliers Wood as well, and parts of Tooting, to ensure, so I'm being hurried up, to ensure that those buses can be used in a targeted way to clean up the air in particularly terrible hotspots. Thank you.
Okay, hope I can get through all of these. So palm oils, first of all, absolutely, it's about the sustainable sourcing, palm oil, and ensuring that that comes from sustainable sources and responsibly farm sources. Similarly, things like timber imports from South America, and also you turn it around to say ensure that we're not exporting waste. So it goes the other way as well. It's ensure that we're not sending our emissions and our waste somewhere that is happy to accept them for financial reasons because they're not as subject to the same lax or subject to the same regulations as we are. I think we came back on to roads over here, so talking about Liberal Democrats will ban the sale of petrol and diesel vehicles by 2030. That allows a phase out of the fleets and also investments in electric vehicle charging networks so that they become a viable option. Because at the moment outside of cities, where there is a much more sparse charging network, it's genuinely not an option at the moment. So I think that's important, that will improve the quality of our air. And exactly as Toby says, concentrating on our polluting buses and turning those into the either the very, very low emissions or zero emission vehicles that are on the market today, how we can do today. And I think it's a recurring theme now. There are so many things that we can do today that we're just not doing, and they absolutely have to be our focus whilst we spend investment on coming up with solutions to things that we currently don't have a solution to, like aviation and like Heathrow. So at the moment, expanding Heathrow is not compatible with our climate change goals, which is why I think we are right to be against those Democrats. I think, however, that's kind of fraught with reducing our access to the world, reducing our connectivity, reducing our trade links. Therefore, our focus should be on decarbonising that, reducing road access to the airport, increasing rail access, and all that sort of stuff. But absolutely, we are against, the Democrats are against Heathrow expansion, not only due to emissions, but also noise and disruption to local residents. What have I missed? Sorry? Yeah, I think that the Labour policies of renationalising all these things distracts from actually fixing them and investing in them. I think it's a waste of money, and maybe my next the answer could question could suggest why it's not a terrible.
I don't see the contradiction between nationalising an industry and making it more environmentally aware. I would imagine that a publicly owned company can invest more time and more commitment to making those industries more aware, as it has more control and power over it. I think there is, for me personally, a big discussion as to whether you would make the nationalisation of the gas industry one of your major projects, because for me, building homes for people is the #1 priority. Over 50% of the people I see at my advice surgery are being threatened with homelessness or live in overcrowded conditions. The home environment of so many of our families are absolutely dreadful. This Christmas there will be 136,000 children in temporary accommodation without a home, and for me that is my top priority. In terms of air quality, Labour will introduce a new Clean Air Act, including a vehicle scrappage scheme and clean air zones that comply with World Health Organization limits for fine particles and nitrous oxides. Clearly, the only way we're going to encourage people out of their cars is by having serious improvements in public transport, by ensuring that buses are transferred to electric buses as soon as possible. And for South London, we definitely need more rail, more tube in order to get people from central London. And I know people will want to ask me about Heathrow, but I'll get a question. I'm just getting the vote carded.
Cycle routes.
Yeah. All right. I support a third runway at Heathrow, and I support a third runway at Heathrow because without it, we are going to see London fall behind. London is one of only 2 regions in our country that produce more tax than they spend. Without that money, all our hospitals, all our schools, all our schemes for improving our environment will end. Because without that tax, we won't be able to pay for those services. And it's particularly acute because we may be facing Brexit. If London is not part of the world, they're at the front of things, we will fall behind. And for all of us who remember London in the 1970s, we know that it's not an inalienable fact that London can be in decline.
Okay, so Heathrow to start off with, I'm amazed that Siobhan supports the expansion. Air travel is the most polluting form of travel along with cars. Heathrow is the UK's single biggest emitter of, it's a no-brainer that you don't expand. We also don't want any other expansion, thanks very much. In terms of air pollution, there is a lot to say about this, but I think I'm going to focus on, I'll continue with the transportation theme. So it's the UK's biggest source of emissions. In London alone, transport is 24% of our emissions. We want to get people driving and flying less. We want to create an extensive network that promotes active travel, provides sustainable, reasonably priced and efficient public transport. So, people have already talked about, Lib Dems have already talked about phasing out petrol and diesel cars by 2030. We'd like to do that too. People have also talked about EVs. EVs are better than petrol and diesel, but they're not the ultimate solution. The batteries, for a start, what do we do with those? People have also mentioned thus far the extension of the ultra-low emission zone. I don't know if people are aware that the current plan under this mayor is to extend it to the North and South Circular by October the 25th, 2021. We would like it extended beyond that to all of the London boroughs. We'd also like to see more opportunities for active travel. So the Green Party would cancel the Tory government, Tory party's £5 billion road building scheme. Oh no, I'm out of time.
Sorry.
School traffic and anti-lighting around here.
First of all, I'd just like to address the education question. I did actually work for an environmental group which was focused on the recycling and reuse of plastics. And we had a competition in the schools across Europe. It was a European group. And they were, I think it was France, Germany, Italy, Spain, the UK, and one other. And so we had this competition, and they actually decided that the UK pupils had a built-in advantage, and so they automatically got a deduction of points because they were so well informed about plastics and the environment. This is going back quite a few years. So I think you're doing a very good job there in schools in actually educating pupils. Unfortunately, by the sort of more road systems they have in European countries, they don't have as much knowledge as pupils in this country. So teachers are doing actually quite a good job in education, and I'd like to make sure that that is very rounded. But moving on, just talking locally about the environment and the emissions. If you look at the Borough Council, Merton Borough Council, so there are four testing sites around, and the council ranks somewhere in the middle, but the two worst places are in this constituency, in Morden and Mitcham, Morden being the worst, with 48% of emissions coming from buses. So I really do think it's a bit rich, reading out from a piece of paper and saying that this is the Labour target and this is what we're going to do. It's been a Labour council in power for a very long time in this borough, and very little has happened, and the emissions that are coming out and being produced by this council are the highest in this constituency and very high London-wide, and something should have been done a long time ago about that. Thank you.
Well, we're not looking to build on Heathrow Airport. We're actually looking to scale it down and to build affordable housing. Why? Because the plan that we have in mind is to build 6 runways in the Thames estuary, which is basically for 6 runways, Thames estuary, which is linked to Crossrail and also to the Tube. I mentioned earlier on that we're very much about a scrappage scheme for diesel cars and for diesel buses. So that's the way we're looking to sort of like pan it out. And the issue was mentioned regarding like schools, I think it was earlier on. Well, what we're not for, the only thing that we're not happy with is like the teaching of gender identity within school. Why? Because if you think about it, so I'm just, okay, I thought it was, okay. So,
no, it wasn't, it's about the environment.
Okay. I thought it was. My apologies, sir. I thought it was. That's why I was looking. Thank you.
I like your answer.
Thank you to all our panellists this evening. I'm really sorry that we have no more time for further questions. I know that there are a lot more burning questions from the room, but thank you to all our panellists for explaining your positions, your personal positions and your party positions. I think we feel that we've gained a few more answers, and I really do hope that it helps you make your decision on Thursday. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you everyone for coming. It's great to see you all here. I know it's frustrating when you have lots of questions to ask, but we only have such a short amount of time. I just wanted to say also again, thank you so much to all the candidates for coming here. Thank you, Natalie, for being our fantastic. We are quite a small group of individuals from Extinction Rebellion. We funded all of this on our own, off our own backs. We had to pay for the hall, we paid for everything. So if anybody wants to give a donation, that would be amazing. It would go towards the hall and towards the leaflets and everything that we've all kind of put in out of our own pocket. But thank you so much for coming, and you can have a glass of wine or a cup of tea. But thank you so much, and thanks again.